On here, call the meeting to order at 5:15. Say, start 2.1, they want to adopt the agenda. Council Wilhelm, Council Prestige.
I'll make a motion to council adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the question, all in favor. Carried, and down to our continuation of our budget discussions.
So if I could, Mr. Reeve and members of council, we just want to go over the agenda again, so we're working our way through the budget in the orderly manner that we have been. And so we'll continue on with the departments going through their operating and highlighting changes, etc. Then what we want to do is we've worked very hard at looking at some financing options that moderates the 6% that we want to share with you. But we want to go through those so you can kind of be thinking about them, and then if we've got other questions on the operating budget or the capital budget, we can circle back and get those. But we think it would be helpful to be able to explain the budget financing options so you can be thinking about it as we do the other.
So, for a second. Yeah, just checking, is Councillor Burrows online?
I think he was, I don't think he's there right now.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, you are, perfect.
Just checking, John, thank you.
There you are, way down in the corner.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the mute button, that's all.
Okay. So if that works and that works best in terms of committing everybody here, so we're being effective, and we absolutely do look forward to walking you back through the proposal. We think we've got some sound options for you, and we do look forward to sharing with them and getting your feedback.
Okay, I guess whenever you guys are ready, we continue with cemeteries?
Yes, page 75.
All right, whenever you're ready, Heather, thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Reeve and Council again. We are here to discuss the cemeteries budget. This is for the Klondike Cemetery. However, we also have some dust control for Topland included in this budget. There is actually a decrease this year in the budget, mainly for one reason that I can let you know. We did build parking lot. The guys at the fort, Kevin, did an amazing job. I don't know if you guys have been out to the cemetery yet, Peter, if you've seen it. It's a great parking lot. We're just gonna be building a man gate so that people can get from the parking lot in there so they don't have to go up on the highway to get into the cemetery. But mainly what we're gonna do in 2025 is just maintain, so there is some fees in there for mowing. But 2026, you will probably see a few things that we need to do to meet the provincial standards with, just due to the Cemeteries Act and what we need to have. There were some paths, there was something else in there that I can tell you about in 2026. So mainly for this year, we're just looking at actually 6,500 decrease in the cemeteries budget.
Any questions on cemeteries? No, looks like we're ready to keep going.
Hello, Reeve and Council. So I'll be presenting the planning development budget. So overall, I'm going to go over some of the key priorities and initiatives that we have on the go or plan for 2025. One of the largest ones is we're planning to commence and finish the land use bylaw in Q2 of 2025 and start the intermunicipal development plan, as well as initiating the area structure plans for our hamlet communities as outlined in our MDP, task list. From there, we're also seeking to retain an engineer on an annual basis to help us develop some environmental regulations in our land use bylaw and provide some additional assistance on interpreting engineering plans when we receive them at time of development, and providing some recommendations on how we approve certain developments. We're also looking at replacing our old outdated Catalyst software. Currently, right now, it's no longer supported. We have a software that has no updates, no security updates. So we're looking at updating to their new system. Approximate cost of $20,000. This mainly is to increase staff efficiency. The current software is just not doing what we need it to do. on the overall budget, there is, it looks like an extensive increase from the previous year. However, there has been a reallocation of costs. We have some of the old rec budget put now into planning and development to reflect some organizational changes. There's a director's position in here as well as additional training. We also have some expense increases for our SDAB board training, and that's reflected under our business travel accommodations as well as training expenses. From there, we also, we have, I'm down now at page 83. There is 3% for COLA. There is approximately 11,896 in merit-based increases. We have the rebudgeting of our admin position. Before it was split in multiple departments, now it's going to be solely under planning and development. We also have anticipated, we have an increase here for legal fees. We have a few legal enforcement cases going on, and we anticipate there will be costs associated with that. So we're trying to be proactive and put some money aside to plan for the worst case scenario. We also are looking at, we do need to replace some equipment in our department as well. We have outdated phones as per our policy that have to be replaced, so there's a cost associated there, as well as computers that need to be replaced as per the policy. And I'll open it up for questions. Are there any questions?
Any questions so far? Nope, not seeing anything yet.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we have agricultural services. Don will be taking over for that.
Good evening, Dawn.
Good evening, your worship, members of council. So I'm coming to you live from Edmonton at a conference, so I just wanted to join in and just update you on our budget. So I'll just go through some of our priorities and initiatives as you have in your package there. So we're going to continue with our vegetation management program and providing that level of service to our residents in terms of spraying and the mowing contract, with the intent of increasing that level of service from this year on our mowing side of things. So we'll work on that. We're going to continue with using our Munisite Ag Mobile for the time being for our inspections, and we're working in transitioning into the new PSD citywide program, and our department is one of the first two to start working into that program. We're going to continue with our level of service in terms of the extension activities for our residents, regarding our sponsorship for conferences, our Ag Bursary workshops, our Beautification Awards, and our Ag Pioneer Awards as well. We will maintain our partnerships with Yellowhead County and Farming Forward for our conservation group, and then also with our Gateway Research Organization for some research activities that they do, also extension activities with other municipalities as well. Continuing on with our monitoring of the various pests like clubroot, the wild boar, beaver control, that sort of thing. Maintaining our equipment rental fleet, and we'll use the citywide for that as well. Hosting our annual appreciation supper, and we've got that scheduled for February 28th in Fort Assiniboine. So we're putting that event on. Our VSI program, we're going to continue the level of service at 50% for our producers, and that is for certain eligible expenses for veterinary costs. And lastly, our pesticide container collection will continue that, as well as our used oil program. And also, the intention is we will increase our level of service on this regarding collection of other items such as twine and grain bags. So that's something that we've discussed at the Ag Service Board level. And we've got the clearance to do it. We just have to do it now. So if we can carry on to the next slide. For changes in our budget, there are not a lot of massive changes. They're very minor changes. We've got an additional cost that we're proposing for an additional support of the Alberta Invasive Species Council in regards to our membership in that group. And so that would be an additional $1,000 in our budget. If we can, and then the other major change that you'll see is our salaries and wages, which most everyone else has been discussing as well. So that's pretty well it on the page 88 of your package. The changes, overall changes from 24 to 25, sorry. As I mentioned, we've got our wage increasing, and then the various costs, that would be the additional support for AISC, the additional utility costs, and then increase in costs in some of our producer education and workshops for facility rentals and such. So that's it. If anyone has any questions?
Councilor Wilhelm?
Just a quick question through the chair to administration, and I'm not sure which administrator wants to answer, but I was just looking at the difference in the ops budget from 2024 to 2025 in salary, wages, and benefits is $299 to about $338. But then in your summary, it looks like the COLA wages increase is only $10,000. So what's the other almost $30,000 in changes in wages?
Which, is this for ARC or is it for?
Ag services, yeah.
Okay.
If you look on 89 and 90 of the sheet, you can see on 89, the summary under salaries, wages, and benefits is $338,000 this year and $299,000 last year. But then when you look at our summary sheet, it's only showing a $10,000 difference. So I was just wondering what
Okay, so the summary sheet is essentially showing specifically related to you could say the wages component of it, whereas the salary, wages, and benefit includes all the other component that makes up employee remuneration that is not including the salaries.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions, John? No, so you're getting off the hook there easy, John.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
You too. Enjoy your conference.
Thank you.
Mr. Roach?
Hello, good evening, Reven Council and my wonderful coworkers. I wanted to open just with a short statement, and that is that 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to present to you, the newly elected council, a couple of economic development ideas and concepts. Number one was that we're all economic developers. Number two was that the economic fate of our county, in part, is in council's hands. And by fate, of course, we're talking about our forestry, agriculture, tourism, and energy industries. Today, I'm happy to be before you, knowing that these concepts have become the root of our economic development activities. It's exciting to have not just an active and trained and reliable economic development committee, but a fully engaged council that's focused on sustainable strategic economic success. A rare feat has been accomplished by this council. Each of you are directly involved in our economic development activities. Whether you're current or former members of the ECDEV committee, representatives at the RITA, Community Futures, or other tables, all of you have direct involvement in what we're doing for economic development. As a result, many of the items that we'll discuss today have been developed by council and should be very familiar. While we're in our financial recovery, we sought to understand how we could improve our efforts. Where did we need support for economic development? How could we do things differently? And how do we position ourselves to pursue our economic opportunities? The budget before you today contains new tools and resources addressing each of these questions. And if we have successful applications for the NRED and SCOP programs, some of these items will end up being multi-year initiatives. And with that, I invite everybody to go to slide 89, please. So 89 is the summary of what we have for our new initiatives, and I'll list the three of them briefly and then open it up to questions. So, of course, we did have the increase of a part-time admin position split between emergency services and economic development that was added last year. The proposal this year is to increase that so that we have a full-time admin position, one devoted each to economic development and to emergency services. We also have some additional items under our sponsorship items, and those include things like increasing, we have a request from Community Futures to take a look at doing a regional program with them to the tune of $5,000. We have a White Court Chamber tourism project that's been proposed that we're still waiting on details, but again, the request there was an additional $5,000. A Barhead Career Expo is a returning event that dropped off the books probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And we have the opportunity to be involved in that. And of course, with the north end of the county being involved with the Pembina Hills School Division, that's something that aligns and makes sense. We have a number of Grow Your Business events planned by our Economic Development Committee, as well as an increase in funding for the business support networks, which are regional in nature. We also have some estimated additional costs for some chamber events. And then under promotion and advertising, what we would like to include is some funding to attract remote workers and to do some other investment attraction advertising outside of what we would do with a successful NRED proposal. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Bert?
Yeah, through the chair. I don't really have any questions, Bert, but for the 3 years or, going on 4 years now that I've been involved in this program, it's taken me a long time to learn exactly what economic development means and is. And it's got so many fingers. It's quite interesting how it plays into all of the different roles and stuff that your senior management team does. And but there's one of the things is this is where I'm going to put the farmer part to this analogy, and that is that it is the second priority under our strategic plan, which is very important in my view, because I think that the diversity that we need in this municipality, rather than just gas and oil and forestry, is in agriculture, which is something that I'm very familiar with. And the big thing is that now that the NRED program that you've suggested that we should go into aligns with a lot of the regional things that are happening and that I've been involved in. And I think that the synergies that we can build through actually financing something in economic development will seed those new seeds that we really need in order to improve our diversity and our revenue stream for this county. So I applaud you for putting up with us for as long as you have, but I really appreciate that you've put the energy and effort in, and I thought I should say that.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Culkin. Thanks very much, and it's been a pleasure, and we'll just keep going.
Councillor Dean?
Through the chair to Bert. For anybody that's watching this online, that's following through, they'll see a 77% increase in the active budget. And with council's blessing, we're going forward with that increase. A large percentage of that is the NRED matching.
Correct.
And I think what's really important from an accountability to the public, from sitting in this chair, is that when that application is submitted and hopefully approved, that we get a detailed plan of how those funds are going to be used.
So again, through the chair, back to Councillor Dean. Yes, so as part of our NRED application, we are just literally putting the finishing touches on it tonight and tomorrow morning. But we do have a fully laid out budget over the 3 years with some broad stroke activities as well as some very specific spending asks. And we'll certainly be presenting that back to the Economic Development Committee. So that everybody can understand and see what it is exactly that we've applied for. But it is very much in line with the RFDs that were brought forward, both to economic development and to council, that council had approved. And I think what was interesting today was we had 2 events in the last 24 hours that have been really reinforcing to me that we are exactly on the right track with what our ask is. And number one is we actually received an invitation today about an upcoming possible trade mission for energy companies from our region to possibly go to India. And so that was something that's interesting because we actually do have a request for how could we participate within a trade mission within the NRED request. And then the second part of things is the minister's announcement yesterday about the province's desire to try to attract, $100 billion plus of new infrastructure around data centers to the province. And we know that that's something that is going to be very focused on what is available on the energy side of things and the energy grid, as well as on available land. And so for us to be able to be working with the partners that we need to be working with and be able to have our story correct and be very well positioned, I think we're really well aligned with what we want to do with NRED to both of those recent events.
Sure. Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing that plan as it's presented to the ECDEV committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else for Councillor Prestidge?
Through the chair to council and administration. What a lot of people don't understand is the Economic Development Department is our front line to new investment into the municipality. When there's a new power plant or a new mill or whatever, they usually come to our economic development officer to get all the information they need. So it's so important that we invest in our economic development department. Hats off to you, Bruce.
Thank you. So through the chair to Councillor Prestidge, thank you very much. And, it really is, excuse me, it is a pleasure to be in this role. And we have some great things ahead of us. And we will just, with the tools that are involved in this budget, just keep striving. One of the things that I did want to mention, we know that council has committed to a pathway for Indigenous inclusion. And one of the items that is in the budget if you take a look on page 90, we do have it listed as a line item under line number 5 to make sure that we're building and strengthening those connections. And while we do have an existing request for $10,000, it's actually under the Legislative Services budget in regards to our operational money for the Indigenous pathways. There is an opportunity as well that should council want to consider an amount or bring an amount forward there for further Indigenous engagement or for support of the Whitecourt Indigenous Friends Society, we could certainly add that to the budget under the sponsorship part of economic development. So in whatever way or spot that might best fit the budget, in my mind, it sort of aligns with some of the sponsorships that we do with other entities where we do an annual check to them for supporting their activities. So, we'll leave that for council to discuss at your upcoming meetings as well.
Anything else for Mr. Roach? Just checking. Don't see anything. Nikita, just making sure that Councillor Burrows doesn't have his hand up. I don't see anything there.
No, I don't see anything.
Okay. All right, I'm just making sure I'm not missing anybody. I guess
Can I
we're...
just, Mr. Reed, just need to clarify here, are you talking there'd be some additional resources?
Yes, so I know one of the things that we have discussed at the Indigenous Pathways meeting is that while we have that 10,000 that is committed and that is in the Legislative Services budget, we do also have a proposal to support the beginning formation of a Indigenous Friends support center through the Whitecourt Indigenous Friends Society. And so that's something where we do have the presentation. I know we haven't really brought it forward fully to council yet, but I'll leave that maybe to or even to Councillor Dean, who are our members on our Indigenous Friends subcommittee, to discuss and decide how you might want to bring that forward.
If I could, you were actually at a conference when we did bring that up at a council meeting in our notes, and we did have a discussion, kind of drawing a comparative between that and was it the Trailblazers?
Golden Triangle.
Or Golden Triangle. And as far, the money to kind of get going in the ask, and I think we were discussing around the 10,000 mark or something when we get to budget time. So it is something we've had a brief discussion. I don't think anybody here felt that it was an unrealistic ask to bring forward. So at least leave that with you for how you want to, if you want to bring it to an RFP or bring it back to us. But we do, I believe, have an appetite here to at least have a look and have a discussion on that.
Yeah, well, and I think at this point, Reven, through to Councillor Dean, we have, I think, probably one of two options. It's something that either we would say, yes, we want to add as an additional expense under sponsorship within the ECDEV budget, or do we want to adjust some of the existing expenditures that are there to make sure that we've got room for it going forward? And I guess that would be something for council to consider as you go forward with your conversation.
Councillor Dean?
Through the chair, is there room within the NRED application?
I do actually have indigenous engagement to the tune of $10,000 over each of the 3 years included as part of the NRED application. So yes, because we do want to do some local engagement in regards to projects and with groups in general around that. It isn't specifically slated at this point for Whitecourt Indigenous Friends, but I mean, if we do receive that NRED funding, there should be that. If that component is approved, then yes, there would be.
Okay. I think my opinion would be that without digging inside the increase to sponsorships, I know you've made a just kind of a general statement that there's increases there. I would like to see whether that component of the NRED application is accepted and approved, and then perhaps at the committee level we can decide where we want to try and find those funds. I wouldn't be in support of adding to this. I think there are funds there that we can find.
Anything else for Mr. Roach? No, I think you're good.
Excellent.
Unless you got anything else, sir?
No, I think that's it. Thank you very much, council. Much appreciated.
Welcome back, Heather. Good evening, Jeff.
Tag teaming, no.
On to Parks and Rec.
Do you want me to go first? You can go first.
You can go first.
Okay. Good evening again, Reven Council. So we're talking about the Parks and Recreation and facilities on this one. And just to give those of you that don't remember what happened in 2019, we used to have in Parks and Recreation its own department. There was 3 full-time staff and 5 seasonal. And then we restructured. And so, as mentioned yesterday, we're looking at increasing some of the initiatives we're looking at is hiring a recreation coordinator. And part of that would be to establish that relationship again with the province, as I mentioned yesterday, and have a look at all of our rec leases and really look at it as a strategy as opposed to just right now what we're doing is just maintaining those rec sites. And I think with Blue Ridge Recreation Area, we have that potential expansion. That's something that we can look at. And this position would definitely be, this would be a strategic thinker, not necessarily boots on the ground mowing the lawn. This would be somebody that would be making those harder relationships that are, and building them and then fostering the other ones. So just to give you a little highlight, so that's what we were looking at with this budget. So you'll notice an increase in the salaries and wages for that. And that also includes our rec boards, which is also on top of the other facilities. So our operating grants with the rec boards is staying the same, status quo. There's a policy that mandates how that looks, and so our budget is completely reflective of that. What those maximum amounts that the boards can apply for is budgeted for, and typically they are just under that. They're not, none of them have maxed out every year. It just depends on what they do to maintain their community halls. So it's, like I said, all based on policy. So there was not a lot of changes in the rec boards. And then in the parks, recreation, and facilities, Jeff's gonna touch a little bit about some of what was done at the rec sites themselves and a list of them. And I can just talk a little bit about the programming that we do, because right now inside the budget is also Blue Ridge Family Fun Day and some of the rec programming that we do. So Jeff's gonna take it away.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Currently, the Park and Rec operations team consists of 1 full-time supervisor, and then in the summer we hire up to 5 seasonal staff. The team in the summer are very busy, just mowing all the sites itself. It's almost a full-time job, plus all the taking care of the picnic tables, make sure that the wood stock is full especially for Turtle Creek campground. Washroom cleaning is one of the major activity as well, and we do get our rec site, especially the washrooms, do get vandalized, unfortunately. So in the current proposed 2025 operating budget for park and rec sites, if you look at the last page of the park and rec section, that lays out the increases. Other than these increases, our budget level stays pretty close to the 2024 level, focusing on maintaining the current level of service. I'm just going to spend a little bit time to talk about the 2 areas that there's an increase. Under the line, the row that's called community programming, this is for janitorial, office, and shop supplies. We're forecasting a $25,000 increase. This consists of mainly the rental of portable washrooms, just because our washroom facilities get vandalized a lot, and we just don't have the tools and equipment to clean ourselves, and we're putting some money to rent, and so that we're still providing that same level of service with the contractor. Out of that $25,000, there's also small amount of money to buy materials, for example, wood chips and trees, shop supplies, tools, hand tools, small tools, those kind of things in that $25,000. The last line, that's called increase in contract services, with a side note of Coatmine Hill. This is a project envisioned in 2024 budget. It's trying to just cut down some of the trees that blocking the view for our Blue Ridge Highway, the Coatmine Hill viewing area. The intention is not to remove trees. The trees, it's a very steep slope. The trees do provide some erosion protection benefits. We were just thinking of trimming the top of those trees down so people can have a clear view, and that $15,000 is intended for that. Other than those two, the human resource budget side that Heather already mentioned, the budget levels stayed pretty close to 2024 levels. Thank you very much.
Okay, any questions? Councilor Prestidge?
It's much question, it's comment. When I first got on council, I sat on the Parks and Rec, and they were doing incredible work. And then we downsized it, and I don't really think a lot of that work has ever been caught up or done anymore. And it's a shame. We've got so many good areas in this municipality that we should be looking after. One person cannot do it. I know the Blue Ridge site, if we do not start working on that and transportation decides to shut that pit down and we do not have a plan in place, they will reclaim it back to what just level heads. If we have a plan in place, they will work with us to reclaim it. As, I think we were looking at an overnight campsite. So if we don't have somebody that's gonna do this, we're gonna miss that opportunity. And same thing with the center of Alberta. We gotta get our act together and get on that stuff. So I really think we need another person in Parks and
Mr. Benedetto?
Councilor Prestige, you're absolutely correct. You save a lot of money when they're doing the contouring, if you've got a planned use, as opposed to having it aligned in some other manner. We agree with the assessment that we are short of human resources in that area, and that's why one of the requests in the staffing is adding back a full-time position. It's best been described, the downsizing, that it pretty much removed the department, and right now we only have the resources to deal with some grass cutting at best and fixing up, unfortunately, a lot of the times vandalism. But that is the extent of the capacity we have right now. So to achieve the service levels that are in your package, this is another case where we need to add some resources to achieve those service levels, and it would deliver the benefits that we're talking about and others, as council's aware, et cetera. So, yeah, we share those concerns right now because of our lack of resources.
like the Blue Ridge Rec area, I don't know if everybody knows the story behind that. It was Alberta Transportation, Alberta Environment, and the county got together, and I'm not sure if Alberta Transportation paid for some of the reclaiming, but we had to give them a plan what we wanted. And if we didn't do that, they weren't gonna do anything. If you know the two lakes there, the North Lake, that was done with no plan, and they just filled the lake up. So the new part, if we don't get a plan in place, they're gonna reclaim it to how they want it, and we will not get it. They're not gonna work with us. So it's so important that we get this done as soon as possible, and we need another person to do it.
So the question I have for you, Heather, now, again, I am not gonna dispute that we need people in the organization, but we were talking yesterday around an individual to help with our community boards and kind of, work with them on garnering extra individuals and support. And we were talking how that could possibly be a seasonal position. Is there any way where maybe if we're looking at adding people, that a person could possibly do that and the rec portion? I understand, it's probably more for one person, but adding one person and taking on a couple of these still reduces the amount of work on everybody. And I'm just trying to look at bottom end on the budget for where we can be. And my concern, and I know I've shared this with everybody here, is yes, I know we need all these individuals, but if I go to my resident and say, yes, we increased your taxes, our expense by over $1 million to fill spots in administration in one go, the problem they're gonna see is that their taxes went up for salaries. If we bring it in little, a couple people, not like say two, three people, the implementation on the tax side isn't as noticeable. And by the time it's done, they end up seeing, way better service for what they're getting because we have the amount of people and the right people in the spot. I just feel that if we put too much at once, yes, I understand like some of these would be better to have one person for these jobs, but maybe we need to, given it's a new position essentially we're redeveloping, that maybe we can develop it to do 2 hats instead of 1 currently, and then people that are wearing 3 to 4 hats, we're taking some of them off.
To respond to that, Mr. Reeve, we understand the concern that you're expressing and finding that balance, and we do appreciate council recognizing the workloads and the capacity constraints that we have that we're trying to address. When we get to the financing options, there are some phasing around the staffing, and whatever allowance that you provide us with, and we've got a recommendation there in terms of an order of magnitude of that allowance, we will be looking across the organization to try to help relieve some of the pressure in as many areas as we can. And one of those proposals right now, and I think it's aligned with what you're saying, Mr. Reeve, would be the phasing of that over 2 years. And I don't want to go into it all now, but that's one of our options. So I think stay tuned until we get to those financing options, and I think you'll find that option really address that concern and yet help improve the sustainability of our organization, because we know for sure, we've got the example here, we had the example yesterday with the utility area and the airport. I can tell you we've got that under control, but if we'd have gone down one more person, we'd have been in big trouble. That's just too close a shave, because you keep rolling the dice like that, and eventually you're gonna not get the result you want. So we'll address that in our
The reason
options.
for asking Heather is because she has a better understanding on these departments and the requirements for what these people have than I have. So that's again why I'm posing the question to you guys, because you guys would have, and we'll work on it later, but the reason I'm asking those is just your department heads, your senior management team have a better idea and a better understanding on the impacts and the needs and where the shortfalls or where it might be more beneficial to put these than council would. I mean, I can have an idea to pick 3-4 people, and I get when we get there off the list, but these individuals who are sitting here in front of us have a better idea on where the shortfalls are and what can be done. So.
We completely agree with you. In terms of the roles, when you give us an allocation, then we work within that allocation. Senior management team has already spent a lot of time in figuring this out. So if we're granted an allocation that we're recommending, we will work to do the best job that we can. And yeah, that's our responsibility. That's in our lane. So you're absolutely right. Yours is providing the resources, and then it's our job to maximize the help to the community and the organization. And the stronger we can be as an organization, the better service we can provide to the community. And that's why we're all here. We're in this together. So we'll address that when we get to the financing options, with your patience.
Councilor Coulton, then Councilor President.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of comments to this. As I understand that whole personnel thing, part of the responsibility of us as council is to understand, number one, why we're adding those positions, and to be able to articulate that not only to our residents, but the purpose of it. And I think that under community development, there are two arms. One is what we do for the community, and the second one is, and I found this out through the bicentennial, is that the areas that those people went to are now being revisited. So it has a huge tourism component. And so we cannot necessarily always measure the wage and salary of somebody who coordinates all of these things with the benefits that come in from it. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned over the last 3 years, is that this interconnection in the work that you guys do, and Dave is absolutely correct, we don't understand it as well as you do. But you have to articulate that to us, and it's our responsibility to tell our residents that, no, this isn't just a position that we put there, but these are all of the different benefits that come from that. So I just thought I'd add that to the conversation.
Councilor President?
Through the chair. Another project that people don't know about is the Windfall Standard General gravel pit. A lot of that is coming up for reclamation. I know Standard General was mentioning that they would like to make it into a recreation area. But I think right now it's a 600-acre lake. Imagine what could happen there. You could have cabins, all kinds of things. And I'm gonna say it again, you need somebody to be point on that.
And I agree completely. With some of these stuff in the center of Alberta and some of the development and stuff we do, I agree 100% that we don't have the capacity internally with the staffing levels that we are at to be able to do that. The thing is just timing and budget. It's.
Timing is right, because if we don't do something, we're gonna lose it.
But if we can't afford it now, if we lose it, if we give, you can a great deal, a great offer can be in front of you, but if you can't afford it, whether it's now or later, it's still gonna be a great offer, but it might not be great for you. That's my, Counselor Dean?
Through the chair to administration, is there time that we could ask that administration research what the timelines are behind the submission of a plan to Alberta Environment for the Blue Ridge Rec area and/or Standard General?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, I have already been in communication with Alberta Transportation. As Councillor Prestige pointed out very correctly, the best plan is when they're still many years away from depletion. We have a plan showing how we want to lay out the lakes and trails and stuff. So as transportation, their reclamation happens in piecemeal. Every time there's a project, you excavate, you reclaim at the end of that project. That's the perfect timing for them to do the work. And if we have a plan early enough, then transportation can instruct their contractors at almost no additional cost to any parties where to put those facilities. We are, my understanding is that the pit is about one more job away from depletion. We're kind of towards the tail end of its, but that's the timing we're in today. Late is better than never.
So did you say that you have a plan with Trails and with Lake and you've been in contact with them?
Sorry, through the chair to Councillor Dean, no, we don't have a plan.
You don't have a plan, okay. And so what is, one job away is that, 6 months, 12 months?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, we don't have that timeline. I don't see, we haven't been contacted to provide that detail of when is the next job coming. It could be a next job on 658 paving, which
And I know from my time spent on Community Service Board years ago, Kara was intimately involved in the development of a rec master plan that included sites all over our county. Heather, I kind of sense from your body language that you have something that you'd like to share with respect to the planning involved.
So it's through the chair to Councillor Dean, there was a plan, I'm gonna say 2015, that the Blue Ridge expansion over into that area, was it 15? So it's not a huge plan, but it was a plan in place, what it would look like. There would be an island, there would be campground, so there is a plan. And so then, when did we meet with them? Earlier this year, when we were talking about this plan, so there is a plan. They're just, we are not at a point, as Jeff mentioned, that we can, it's like, okay, it's depleted, let's do this. So this is something that the rec coordinator, when we were discussing this, would begin that relationship building with them again to say, okay, we've strategically looked at this, we see this as a priority. There are other rec sites that we could list, but we need someone that has that strategic kind of thought process. And as Jeff mentioned, when they do come to us, we can say, this is what we thought. We don't necessarily have to do the plan we did years ago, but it was a great start, and so they know that we're interested.
Okay.
And we're already at the table. We've had, Andre and I met with them last year, and then Jeff and I think Josh, you were in on that meeting as well. So we have meetings with them. However, what happens when we don't have someone dedicated to this, you're pulling Jeff away, you're pulling Josh away, you're pulling sometimes me away. And so it's just having someone dedicated to do that. And that's kind of in your answer to Reeve, your question about splitting these positions. The problem is those are two completely different skill sets. One is more of an on the boots ground social programmer, thinking socially to provide services to the community that are meaningful, that makes them feel like they're connected to their community, that that rural lifestyle is quite different than living in more of an urban setting. So they're two different complete hats, and I think you guys can have discussions later what that might look like, but in regards to mashing those positions, it would be better to either focus on one, in my opinion, or others, and just that's why many hats are happening, and then we have people that, I didn't include you in that meeting, or, oh, I'll send you that, and it just happens, you don't have a lead, you don't have somebody doing that,
But
so,
coming back to the question of the relationship
yeah.
with the developer and the execution of some sort of a plan, that relationship is there?
It's begun. Is it completely flying? No. It's a lot like the Center of Alberta project that Councillor Prestige messaged. Jeff, you've met with them. Josh again has met with them. Andre and I met with them. They're building this, they've got a plan, and they want to hand it to us. So there is a plan.
And could I ask Kara to just weigh in? It looked like you had something to add.
I think Heather covered most of it towards the end there. I just want to say the plan that she's referring to back from like 25-16 was more of a map, a conceptual plan, showing that, we're interested in a campsite and, a bigger area for swimming, things like that. It wasn't like we need this many camping stalls, this is where the trails were gonna go. It wasn't exact like that. It was a conceptual.
So kind of step one has been done and we need to keep going.
Yeah, like they know we're interested.
Sure.
And getting back to the relationships, we used to speak with SRD or then AAP like all the time. Like I still know Bruce's phone number off by heart. And we've lost that now. We don't have those connections, we don't have those lunches, we don't have, like Bruce would be like, hey, let's go look at this and take us out there. Like I think we've been out there with some of the counselors and them also. So just
What was that gentleman's name that was retiring that
Everett Smith, and Bruce Van Ross is still, and I mean, they've had a lot of staff changes too, but those guys are still there and they're always willing to work with the municipality. We have a great relationship with them. It just needs to be pushed along a little bit,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Councillor Burrows online first, and then I have Councillor Prestige and Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to come to the Standard General pit because I've actually seen that plan. And is there a timeline for the wrap up of that pit, and where would we be on that one? But I just ran across it last night rifling through some paperwork.
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, there isn't a definite timeline. As Jeff mentioned, there is still that gravel pit has not been depleted yet. There's still.
Sorry, this is Standard General.
Oh, I thought it was Tom.
No.
Okay, so you take.
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, we are not intimately involved in any discussions with Standard General, so we don't have information.
Okay, well, we should be, because that plan is, I think Councillor Prestige mentioned 600-acre lake with a quite a large recreation area around it. So if no one's aware of that, we need to dust off some stuff because it's a big area. And I think Councillor Prestige might remember this as well, but I'll see if I can fish it out of my documents when I get back, but at the moment I'm on my way to an airport, so.
Go Councillor Prestige first.
Okay, the Blue Ridge pit, there is some gravel left there, but there's not very much. The amount that's there is almost not worth moving a big crusher in to crush it. So they might just decide, that's it, we're reclaiming.
It sounds like we need to reach out again.
Just wait, I got Councillor Coogan.
Yeah, first of all, this is a question, but this is the experience I've had with the Pride Valley pit. Number one, Standard General would have an end-of-life strategy for that pit because that would have been a requirement. So really, if there's an end-of-life strategy, they've got money set aside to reclaim that pit. So the question is how are we going to participate in that? So I don't think the cost would be a huge cost to us, but if we had a plan for it that would mitigate some of the cost to Standard General, that would possibly be a place that we could go. So, when you're talking about some of these plans, I think this again goes to show that you have to have somebody dedicated to having a look at these things. And again, it's our responsibility then as councillors to qualify that to our residents to say, yeah, this is something we're going to miss out on unless we have the capacity to do it.
Mr. Benedetto?
Well, just thank you, council, for reflecting on those opportunities. And the door is open a crack, and we have to decide if we're going to step through that door and do something about it or not. So it's very good that you've highlighted these opportunities. We'll certainly check into what some of the timing looks like, and I'll be optimistic that you'll give us some additional resources. So in us looking at how we best deploy that, it's good that you've raised all these, because we know this is an important consideration for you and the community. And when you're talking possible future facilities of this caliber, that has all kinds of potential for the community. So quite often, a community's got to step up and invest in yourselves, because if you don't demonstrate confidence in yourself, don't expect other people to invest with you. So it would be consistent with the economic development thrust of us taking some steps to invest in ourselves. So we hear you loud and clear, and I particularly appreciate all your comments. I'm not rich on history here, so that was very helpful. So we'll have this in mind when SMT has some further discussions.
Okay, Councilor Dean?
I think everything's been covered.
Okay, back to budget discussions here. Any closing remarks? You guys good? All right, thank you. I guess moving on to, where are we at here now? Library.
I thought I could run, I can't.
It's okay, we like hearing your voice out.
You can run, but you can run, but you can't hide.
Right, and I could never make any money in Vegas, I'll tell you that much. All right,
Yeah, we never know.
you guys ready for library and culture?
Yeah, really ready.
Not a center.
It's not the So as you are aware, Reven Council, this library budget includes the money we give to the White Court Library and our own Woodlands County Board. We haven't received the Woodlands Library Board budget yet. So, hint, no, I can reach out to Mary Ann, that's not a problem.
We have had our budget discussion there, they must not have just sent it.
Okay, we're assuming not much of a big
Yeah, it's
difference.
fairly status
Yeah.
quo.
That's that we thought as well. You are not going to see like a huge difference in here. Basically, the small increase and maybe the Woodlands Library Board might have like a small COLA for their staff included in that, but we're not anticipating anything major. The only other thing that is in culture as well is we do our arts and culture grant, and that is staying the same as well. We're not requesting any extra money on that, so yeah, it'll be really fast, so library and culture.
Again, I want to say thank you for the increase there for the programming that's been run through there. It's been fantastic in both communities. They definitely are utilizing it and definitely appreciate what they've been able to, I guess, do for the communities, just that extra little bit. And not just young kids and our little bigger kid, but they do adult only programming and everything else. And it's been a fairly large success in both communities. So thank you for bringing that back. And the feedback I always get is top tier. So
I'm in contact with Megan and Jenna, the two libraries, quite a bit, and I work with Joseph on several boards. So we're in contact, but Megan and Jenna are doing amazing things with this programmer. And I've heard things from residents saying, for instance, in Blue Ridge, a senior that popped in today, she was saying that she was going there to do this craft, and it was from our funding that this craft is happening. So people in the community are saying, we're going to the library more, they're engaging more, they're doing that. And the whole purpose of that was to decrease that isolation and get that done. Because, as I mentioned, the social needs assessment showed that libraries are more community centers now than they've ever been. People are going there for that. So it's great to hear positive things from the people doing it and the positive from the people that are experiencing the library programming.
Councilor Prestige?
Through the chair. Yeah, the library in Blue Ridge is incredible. There's days I'll just walk in, say hello, and I think every kid in town is there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jenna is like Mother Hubbard. The kids follow her around. And just do an amazing job.
Okay, anything else on libraries? Not seeing any. I guess that's it for all of the departments then. Do we want to take a 10-minute break before we get into?
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea, Mr. Reeve, and I don't see anyone jumping up and going, no, you missed me, so we're good?
Yeah.
Excellent, 10-minute break would be
We'll
wonderful.
Take a 10-minute break, come
We'll
back.
refocus and then we'll come back and,
6:25 here and.
yeah, and we look forward to sharing those financing options with you.
Yep.
consider that one too.
Okay, Mr. Benedetto, whenever you are ready, we'll go on to the next part here.
Well, we do look forward to sharing some options that we've identified for financing the budget for your consideration. But I just want to talk about a benchmark. I don't like using percentages because that can mean a whole bunch of different things. So for example, in the option that is in front of you, the county has kind of used a benchmark residence of an assessment of $400,000. And where we started at the 6%, the impact on that resident of $400,000 assessment would have been $77.42. The options that we are presenting to you mitigate that tax impact down, well, the total increase in revenue to 4%, but the actual tax at 3%, and I'll explain why. But the other benchmark, an industry with $1 million in assessment, which is a reasonable size small business or better, at 6% would be $3,079, and with the financing strategies of reducing that to 4%, that drops to $2,046. So because we've got favorable mill rates, I mean, none of these really are punishing to the ratepayer, and we realize that any increases are important. Now, I want to just touch on this 4% that is here. And with the provincial tax holiday coming off of some of the resource company facilities, we've got 1% that came back on. So, it used to just say growth. Well, now, thanks to the province's growth and tax holidays lapsing. So that gives us 1% that doesn't tack onto the other ratepayers because that's equivalent to an assessment growth with it coming back on stream. And certainly, we would urge you to at least be at 3% CPI. Now, and the normal CPI, which is based on the basket of goods that you'd purchase at a household, I mean, obviously the purchases at the county where we're buying diesel fuel and grazer blades and equipment is quite different. So that is higher, but certainly we would hope that we wouldn't be going less than the 3%. So all of the options we're going to present to you preserve the good progress that's been made on fiscal recovery, allows us to address some of the human resources and the organizational capacity that we have to build. And we also, as we outlined at the start of the budget, there's still a big focus on our infrastructure with the roads and some of the water and sewer systems that we have to rebuild. So we're continuing to recover our infrastructure. We'd be making an investment in our human resources, and none of this takes away from the money that's been put away through the very difficult fiscal recovery plan, but that's a benefit that's been put in place. So all of these options meet those principles, and none of them carry money forward that encumbers the 2026 budget. So these are all financed within the framework that we're proposing. So on the basis of the revised capital being accepted, and you gave us a benchmark, it was around 4 million-ish to make reductions. That was a difficult task, but we think that it can work. We definitely are very concerned about going any deeper because we hit the bone with the knife already. And some of the other places where we're looking at altering the method of delivery, that'll be put on hold for another year. But an important exercise through any budget is looking at how you're providing services, should they come back in-house, or do you get a better value for contracting it out? Like, really questions my mind before we spend $250,000 on a garbage truck that is used 2 days of 7, that maybe a request for expression of interest as a principal. So we'll continue that due diligence and work with you. But although some of those ones that we did see a benefit where we had to spend $650,000 in capital for mowers, they have been put in abeyance for now. So this proposal, with the acceptance of the capital as adjusted, which you asked for, in terms of the revenue requirement, it'd go up 4, but the actual impact on ratepayers is 3. And that would allow us to finance this budget and be within those parameters. So with that, I should turn it over to Denisha to walk through the others, and then we'll open it up for questions. If you have a question now, fire away.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to the impact at 3% versus 6%. So we have in front of us a chart showing the impact at 6%.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
you had, so it's, based on an assessment of 400K, it's a $77.42
At 6%.
at 6%.
Yeah.
And did you tell us what it was at?
Yeah, at 4%, that drops to $51.60. And none of these are harsh because you've got very favorable mill rates because there's been, careful management and really keeping that in check over the years. So when you look at the mill rates that Woodlands County has got in place, you're far below others. But yes, that's the difference on a $400,000 home, which is pretty decent residence. And of course, there's plus or minus, depending how lavish place you have. Are there other questions on that one, or can Denisha go into the others?
What is that, Nikita?
Anyway, we'll carry on. It's not so bad that we can't continue with the meeting.
Well, thank you, members of council. So just a quick overview on the positions that are in the new initiative. So they're not all the same. We have at least one position in their example, the heavy-duty mechanic. That is a position that will pay for itself, considering what we're spending right now. If we were to take that internally, we're not going to be spending that same amount of money. So that gives us some savings there. We all have at least one position in the new initiative, which council recently just finished talking about, being the position in the rec department, wherein right now it's an investment but could generate a position that work towards generating additional revenues in the future. So it's not immediate, but there's a future revenue source that could come from that. So we could look at that position, whether or not we want to invest in it now for the future, or delay, dependent on council's decision. And then we have some positions that are there, which is sort of balancing out the different hats that different administrative persons are wearing right now. So with the assumptions that we made that our CAO talked about, we focused on the main thing in this budget. The main thing in this budget this year, you say the elephant in the room, it's the $1.25 million roughly of a new initiative, which a huge part of that is new staffing. So how could we do that without offering or asking for a 6% rate increase? So we assume the 4% rate increase with the increase in the additional revenues that we're getting from the tax holiday. And so that will allow us, if we were to remove the position that will right now pay for itself, split the budget roughly 50%-ish in over the 2 years. And so it still provides us the opportunity to get some of the human resources that we need right now to help with some of the programmings and different initiatives that we heard throughout this process. But it also allows us to, currently in this budget, we do have some costs that are one-time costs. So we went through the budget to find what costs are some of the costs that we have this year that are in the base as a one-time. So it's not going to continuously repeat in future years. And we chose at least 4 years that it won't recur, at least 4 years. Most of it is not more over 5 years that it will not recur. That is currently in the base, that if the base supports it and it goes away next year because it's one time, then that cost could, that savings there would then fund the delay of those additional costs. And what that does then, it reduces any pressure from the budget to future budgets, so not 26, not 27, not 28, not 29, to say increase rates to fund positions. So that's how we look at the numbers and try to work at the numbers in order to achieve what's here, so you and the future without, as our Reeve had mentioned, give the public the impression that we're increasing rates in order to pay for, to take on personnel but we're looking at it that way. So that's how we thought about for the main component of this change, the staffing. And of course, if council approves that and accepts that, then we would go back to our staff and our manager and determine which are the best positions to then move forward with. And council might have some favorites, like you may say, okay, in your selection, we want to ensure that this is going ahead. Like, for example, if you want to favor the recreation or the program coordinator, then we will ensure that that is in the mix of the positions that go forth in that selection. So we do have those flexibility. We also know that yesterday our Reeve put forward the suggestion of starting seasonally with our programmer. Yes, that is something that we can explore within that. We developed this approach as a holistic approach that we can put and move things around. We didn't go down to the fineness of details to find everything because we're in a budget situation, but we can play with the numbers, some within those limits. Go ahead.
Councillor Dean, I think you had a question there, a little bit too far.
I did, but it was answered.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I believe Councillor Burrows looks like he might have a question online, just can't really, or no, maybe not, it's just the microphone thing. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Sorry, it's just hard to see a screen there, so
Yeah.
didn't want to miss him.
And that's fair. And we'll highlight the second option that we have. And again, it's on the screen as one option here, but again, it involves different things, and then we can discuss after and different things. So the option 2 we focused on was, again, still the same phasing. It's a combined approach, so we are still phasing in the staffing. And then council can choose where it wants to go as far as above the 4% for revenue. And that difference there is to have the ability to put away additional funds. So let's say if, after your discussion and your consideration, you were to determine that, okay, based on the numbers that you're seeing, $77.42 in a 400K property of the increase for the municipal rate, that, okay, that's fair, let's presume that, and we want to maintain that. We will still do the phasing of the staffing to reduce that cost, maintain that revenue, and use that difference that we have in surplus to add to our infrastructure reserve. It's not a lot, but it is still moving in small steps into the direction that we want to go. If council wants to say make that 4.5%, it still provides something that we can move forward if it's 5%. So again, we can work with that. So we will still do the first option of phasing in, and also gives the option of what do we want to add to our reserve forward. So those were the two broad things that we focus on. On those two ends, there are certain other options that can come out as we are talking and discussing. So we can go from there.
Councillor Kuchen?
Yeah, just a question. So what we're looking at here is increasing the capacity.
Yeah.
The admin capacity, and that is what we're focusing on in this budget. But we also, after we approve the interim budget in March or April, when we approve the final budget, there's a possibility of two of us to say, we would like to see our reserves increased, and we could look at the percentage and the tax rate then? Is that kind of what you're suggesting?
So it's through the chair to Councillor Peters. So it is somewhat that. So whether council determines that now or in the spring, the impact is the same. I know in the spring we will have to say our final and true assessment to see what that number is. Right now, we are using the assessment as of what we have at November. I don't anticipate, we haven't been getting from the assessor that, the market has swung significantly into the plus. So I don't anticipate that the change in assessment is going to be so high that it's require, like, for example, a 1% increase because it's over 2% or 3%. So I'm thinking there's a moderate change that might be there. Now, with the approval of the budget, say now, and not wait till the spring, let's say, for example, our assessment were to increase, our assessment base were to increase 200K, or let's say 500K. That doesn't, and council has approved this budget, we haven't received additional money for spending because at the end of the year, we can only spend what council approves. So that change that we had not budgeted for could be, would then go into the rate stabilization reserve. So maybe then next year or in a future year, then that is offset. So, yeah, so it doesn't give us more spending room by that change because we can only spend what council approves.
Just in terms of, you always want to look at these very important process of setting service levels and programs you're going to deliver to the community and what are the benefits of a budget package. And we would say there's three major objectives achieved through the budgets that you've just gone through. The first one is that we're not tapping into any of the funds that you've worked so hard and everybody has here and sacrificed to restore cash and pay reserves. Those are being preserved, so we're not going backward at all on that front at all. The second pillar of sustainability was functional and reliable infrastructure. And you've seen the 5-year condition assessments, but this budget does address those most critical repairs. And the focus being on recovering the integrity and the reliability of our water and sewer systems toward the airport and in our hamlets, because we've got some areas we are crossing our fingers that the Band-Aids don't fall off before the frost is out of the ground in the spring, so we can get them fixed. And the other thing is by phasing the staffing in over 2 years, we are addressing organizational capacity to deliver the programs and services that you've approved and have put in place for this community to a higher level than what's been possible due to the lack of resources. So we believe that those are three important fundamental outcomes that this budget package provides for this community.
Councilor Dean?
Through the chair to council and administration, I think it's just important to remember that by whatever we decide to approve, whatever staffing additions result from the approval of the budget that we end up saying yes to, we still have to hire these folks. Mm-hmm. And so there's money in the budget to hire them, but we know that service delivery depends on people actually in the office. And so I think it's important that the public knows and that we remind ourselves that we may not find a Parks and Rec director until October of next year. You never know.
Yeah.
That's just a reality.
Councilor Little?
Through the chair to administration, just something that I need clarification on, like with regards to the budget that we're talking about now and in the next meeting on December 10th, like the approval of this budget is simply interim, is it not? Like we don't do a final budget approval until we get all of our assessment in the spring. That's what we previously done in the past. So in the event we've passed a budget number, X amount of dollars, and there is a significant amount of new growth or whatever, assessment growth, from my understanding, we don't take that additional assessment growth and then sock it away. We've got a fixed budget for the 2025 year. We would just adjust the mill rates accordingly to keep the county budget at what we set it. Is that not, I believe that's what we've done in past years.
With an instance that we had the other year where we set our budget, we set our percentage, and with the increase in assessment was an extra, 10 or 12% over the budget. We ended up with residents with like a 15%, whatever, tax increase. So that's, we just want to make sure that if we set this, say we approve of 4.5%, if we end up with a 10% assessment growth across the, the board, that we're not going 10% plus 4.5%, 14.5% on the residents' tax bills.
Yeah, can I answer that? Because there's an important distinction here that is really, really important. Of that overall assessment growth, it is absolutely critical that you insist that the assessors tell you how much was real growth, where there's been new construction, new companies, new businesses. Now, that's also over time, we have to provide the services to those new businesses and those new residences. The component of growth that the other part is important is how much was inflation. So if that $400,000 assessed house is assessed at $440,000 next year, so that component was inflation and not growth, you should be factoring in the inflation component in your calculation of the mill rate. You should not be using growth to artificially lower the mill rate, because as your community grows, you're not keeping pace with serving the community. And I've not seen in the records here, and not that I've seen all of them, I've not seen that distinction of understanding that fundamental difference of that assessment mix between inflation, where it did not grow, versus real growth. And if you do not take the revenues from the growth, the new assets that are in your community, that over time has a compounding effect. Because let's say that you had 5 new country residential subdivisions. Well, if you're not taking that growth to fund serving them, you are then serving that new areas out of your old budget. So you get yourself in trouble over time. And absolutely understand that $400,000 house became $440,000. You don't want to be doubling up the $40,000 in inflation and the mill rate, but that distinction should be drawn, and adjustments should be made. And the other piece, to hold the assessor's feet to the fire, get them to give you a heat map and show you across the county. Usually you'll ask, show us what assessments went up the average. It went up 4%, and I'm picking up numbers to illustrate the point. But if there's an area where the assessments went up 10%, it can happen because the assessment on residential is based on July the previous year. So if you have a country residential area and nothing is sold, well, they're trying to forecast, but they don't know. So someone sells it and they sold their house for $100,000 more, that's going to affect those assessments. But you should get that heat map showing where those more substantive increases have happened, so you can make that informed decision knowing the inflation factor on the assessments. So yes, I encourage you to be very mindful of that. But the other piece that I've not seen here is that separation of those two components and the heat maps showing you where it's above average.
Right. Councilor Burrows, are you trying to speak there?
Mr. Chair? Oh, yeah. Yeah, please. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to follow up on what Mr. Benedetto said. That is exactly why we had created that ad hoc taxation committee that we were trying to get going, is to really flesh that out on the differences between real growth and market growth. And then that heat map that he's talking about specifically, I know we had properties where, no properties were sold, and then you get a sale in that one area, and all of a sudden everybody's assessment doubled, and it was pretty rough on those people for taxation. So I absolutely really
happy to hear Mr. Benedetto talk about that. And I think it is something that Woodlands hasn't been doing in the past, and it's something that we need to be doing in the future. So that work needs to continue, and we need to get that fleshed out so that when we do set the mill rates, that we're looking at generating revenue, and that we're looking at mill rates based on both the market assessment and market growth and real growth. Because if you look back at Woodlands history in 2014, our assessments were actually decreasing, and we had left the mill rate flat, and that was a decrease in taxation and a decrease in revenue. So that got us in trouble. That's it for me.
Councillor Cluden?
Yeah, that's really important, John. Like I remember that discussion. We had that discussion at our ad hoc meeting. The other part that I find, and I talked with Mr. Benedetto about this earlier, and that is that in the future, what we really need to do is we really need to understand what our reserves need to be, and we budget accordingly as well, because it's not really fair. I mean, it's the same as you do in your own business, is that if you don't put something away for the rainy day and understand exactly what you need there, I think that, topping up our reserves needs to be, down the road, put into our budget strategy.
Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair, on our reserves, we don't want to use it to fund projects. It should be there for emergency use only. And if we do take money out, there should be a program in place on how to repay it. Because that's where we ran into problems years ago, was we had reserves, and every year they take a little bit more out and a little bit more. And pretty soon, there was no reserves, and our expenses went up. And that's how a municipality goes broke.
But also that point, I think we've got a different mindset and culture with our administration that we have as far as looking at the numbers from before. I mean, we definitely our image of what we're getting now, I'm gonna guess is a lot different than what the councillors in the past were getting when it came to the actual financial state of where things were. And it's a lot of work from our administration to be able to provide that, and hopefully we don't end up going back to that, so.
Well, we get a new council, they may not agree with it.
I
So we put something in place now that is a framework. I think we need to do that.
Councillor Coogan, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, and that is that if, this is always my fear, is that, all the work that's been done primarily in the last 6 months, that we don't lose that, because there's been so much, it's been so much clearer for me. I see a plan now, I see a strategy now, which I haven't seen before, so just, sorry. I think that we really need to make sure that we go down that road.
Councillor Wellham.
So just to follow up on my original comment, the discussion around what we're doing with regards to budgeting, then this is a little bit different than what we've done in the last several years, right? We've done budget-based taxation for our residents, except for the 1 year where there was a misunderstanding of what we were doing. And what we're talking about today is a change in strategy with regards to our budgeting. I mean, I didn't quite understand that was the direction that we're going in. Right? To be fair, maybe I didn't understand, or maybe it just wasn't communicated properly, but is my understanding from earlier budget discussions is we were doing a fixed percentage revenue increase and basing our budgets on that fixed revenue increase, percentage revenue increase, and we would adjust the mill rates based off of that, not adjust the mill rates and then see what happens when assessment comes in and figure out the money from that point.
Through the chair to Councillor. So there are multiple components to the budget that we have to consider. right? And in the communication that I think was included a few, I can't remember when it came to council, just to show a brief outline of the timeline. Part of that communication had to do with our capital. So part of the reason, or that, what should I say? I have to say, one of the reasons why as a county we had struggled with our capital projects going forward and being completed in the year is when we approve the budget for capital in the spring, we are 3 months, 4 months behind to start planning for that project and start in order to get our tenders out. By the time all of that happened, the summer season is over and we're in. So we noticed that this year when we came. So while I do understand that, and we can work with the operating side perhaps not being finally firm, we do want council to commit to the capital budget so that our Director of Infrastructure can have his plan in place going into the new year so that he can start his work with his staff and his work with getting his tender documents going out. Now, the capital component is a large part of the budget overall because the funds are coming from that. And we are using the rates that we are proposing right now to support that capital. So bearing that we don't have a large growth in our assessment base come April, we can't be going backwards on those rates because we've already committed to the capital and our team has already invested in that work. So there's that component of that is impacting.
I totally understand
Yeah.
that. And that's why I was talking about passing an interim budget, not knowing what the revenue is gonna be based on the assessments that come in. As a council, I can definitely see us approving an interim budget with regards to a fixed rate. And when you do budget-based taxation, your budget is your budget. We'll adjust the rates to make sure that that budget is met, right? So that is how I understand how this process would work. We're not passing a budget right now and then in the spring, once we see taxation, we would need to adjust based on it. If there is, I don't want to call it a windfall, but a dramatic change in assessment, and there's a significantly more revenue coming in than expected, like Councillor Kush said, that's great, we have growth and that occurs, but our budget should be what our budget is, in my understanding.
Can't just kind of follow up, and that's kind of, and to your point on, if there's new growth or new development within the area, obviously that helps the budget, that's extra that we can put into it, and I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is, we'll say residents that we currently have, like that 1 year where we ended up with, again, a windfall in our assessment where it just went up really high, and then we kept our taxation rate that we were talking about at budget time on top of that. It ended up a very expensive year for a lot of residents, and it was something that we hadn't anticipated at this side either. It wasn't communicated properly to us. So I think kind of what we're saying is like, whatever we pick for our number, what we want to go with on the generation side, we definitely support. We need those numbers, you need your capital, we need the money for operational. It's just if, again, for example, if we hit another year like we had before where, say it's a 10% increase in assessment and there's zero new growth, so just how do we mitigate that?
Well, that's the perfect example, where it's not driven by growth, it's driven by an inflationary factor where the provincial assessment regulations, which are set by the province, where then you should be adjusting the mill rate down, because by the time you take the 10% higher assessment, you adjust the mill rate down to finance the budget at the level you set. So I just want to clarify on when we're talking about an interim budget. The capital program, the commitment to that, of course, helps us get on with designing and getting out tenders and getting out earlier in the market. I really look forward to the team having a full construction season to work with, because they did incredible things with half a construction season, but because all those pieces were not in place, there were no plans, no design, no tender packages, and we're halfway through the construction season. So everybody worked very hard to rescue the construction season. I look forward to what can be done for our roads and fixing up our water and sewer systems, having a full construction season. But that starts now, so they know what they've got to work with. Now, an interim budget, it is absolutely makes sense. We get the real assessment numbers, how much was inflation, how much was growth, to review those components. And there's probably, unless there's something wonky with the sales, it's probably going to be pretty static. We know our lead indicator of development permits, unfortunately, it's been pretty, not going down, which is good, but we wish we had some big project coming on. That would be very helpful. So looking at those components and understanding the taxpayer impact, absolutely. What we would be in very difficult shape would be if it was used as an opportunity to be reviewing everything, so we're almost doing budget number 2. So in that limited window that you're talking about, that I think I understand you're talking about, and having had your experience of not segregating that it was inflation, we absolutely get that you want to do that, and you should be and will commit to doing that. And segregating the assessor, push them to tell you how much is inflation, where nothing changed except the factors that they use, versus real growth. And do the heat maps and do all that properly. And that makes all kinds of sense. But we can't be going through this whole budget again. I can tell you, all of us we've had to juggle priorities to try to put the time into this budget, and we've all got a to-do list that will choke an elephant yet, because we've had to be so focused. But we wanted to deliver to you a very solid, well thought out, fundamentally sound budget. So I'm hoping, if you've got more questions, we are done presenting. I don't know if both of those options here are 3% and the 1% for the tax holiday that's over. That's the level they're at, and it's decreased the impact, as we've talked about. So if there's comfort with one or those two of those options, so you could direct us, bring the budget to us based on option 1 or 2 or whatever that is. If we could get that direction tonight, then we're in great shape. We can start putting together that package to go for your official approval of the interim budget. But our understanding needs to be there's a select group that's going to be adjusted. And yes, technically, is it interim budget? Yes.
Okay. And that was all my question. It was actually, there's some verbiage, I guess, we're talking about, but in the past 3 years, the way it has always worked is by the end of December, the budget that we did pass, we never changed it in the spring after the fact, and we didn't have another full budget cycle to do the discussions. It was, we've set your budget for 2025, we'll say, and then in the spring, once all those assessments come through, we did a final review of what everything was happening, and that was the final approval of the budget. There was no, as far as I understand in the past, there was no reason to delay capital projects, and I don't believe they were delayed based on that process. But I just want to make sure that I understand what the process is moving forward, and it felt like it was moving in a way that I didn't understand.
No, so just to clarify the terminology, it's an interim budget. Now, if something substantive happened, you may have to review something. But normally what you're reviewing is to finance that budget, then you're looking at the mill rate setting exercise. And the mill rate setting exercise is where you look at your assessment. Was it inflation? Was it growth? Here's your heat map. And here's what it looks like the impact will be on the taxpayers. That is very normal to go through that, evaluating your assessment, understanding the impacts, setting the mill rate. That's different than churning back through the budget. So if that's what you're talking about, we're fine.
I think we're on the same page then.
Good. I wanted to hear that. Then, and that common understanding, then we are fine with that.
Okay.
And again, question for Denisha or Mr. Benedetto. So the proposed tax.
If I could, Mr. Reed.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John. I didn't see you up there.
Sorry, my battery died. I think if I can maybe throw more confusing terminology, and what we're looking at is a requirement-based budgeting process. So we're getting presented a budget based on, this is the requirements that we have in revenue to provide the service levels that we're looking at right now. And then when we go through the mill rate setting exercise, we have to be aware of what the effects assessment is going to have on those things. So for example, if we were to lose in the past, like we did, we lost, you know.
We lost you, John.
Councilor Burrows?
Plane crashed.
Phone's dead.
Okay, I guess, back to my question. What is the
By percentage, we would, instead of seeing that instead of that $40 increase that we're talking about, we would actually see a, are you there? Hello?
You are breaking up really bad there, John.
Can you hear me now?
Councilor Burrows?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay.
He's basically saying.
Where did you lose me?
At the beginning.
Right at the beginning.
That's the bad news.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. At least I know where I am. I'll start over. The idea that we're looking at is a requirement-based budgeting process. So we are looking at approving a budget so that you can do capital projects and you can add positions as administration, an increase in revenue. And when we get to the building setting past what stung us in the, we had no real growth, no new growth, and we had a decrease in market because in the mill rate where it was, we were actually decreasing revenue and decreasing taxes. So instead of seeing that 40 some odd dollar increase to make up for it, we were seeing a decrease in revenue, and then we borrowed from reserves because that mill rate setting exercise was not being carried out. So I think we're all talking in the same terms, but with different terminology. And again, I'm going to read.
And we
Just say it.
We're saying the same thing.
Reaffirm that
Somebody's choking.
Did everyone get that? Because I hear them talking in the back.
Yeah, we got it.
We got it.
I think we got the gist of that, John.
Oh boy. Okay.
Okay.
Somebody's
So the proposed increase is 4%?
So, to the chair, so right now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the amount that's in the budget as presented right now is 6% on the rates. So that generated the revenue that we currently have with the tax holiday, which have that everything fully funded as presented. And of course, we understand the appetite for that. So we have the 4% that would give us the phase approach. And meet the capital. So the capital that is currently presented is still there with the phase approach, and we will do that, the staffing over 2 years with the 4% as it is. If we do the phase approach with any revenue increases beyond that 4%, the rest goes into reserve. So it's,
No,
yeah.
my point to that is, and again, with discussions that I've had with the mills and everything too, and other residents, is given that inflationary costs are already at just about 3.5,
Yeah.
I don't think 4.5 would be hard to sell to residents, given that we are only increasing at 1% over the inflation of our cost.
Yeah.
And that's just, and we're still under that 6.3. We're still, I mean, there are lots of other municipalities. I think Edmonton was 8.1%. They just went up. I know it's a larger scale,
Yeah.
but you see a lot of the other municipalities and stuff, everybody's in the same rate.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that going, percent over inflation is extraordinary.
No.
Councillor Wilhelm?
So with regards to Councillor Cush's comment, what does 4.5% mean? So is that the stage staffing approach, or 4.5% is more like, can I get an understanding of if we set a 4.5%, what is the impact on what's happening here?
If we were to say 4.5%, it will create a small surplus that we would have. Because right now, 4% would sort of balance it out.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, with the phasing, yeah.
There's two choices here. One could be that it'd be this small surplus, or maybe we get to go half a position more in terms of the phasing in of the staffing. And, given the pressures in the organization, I would hope that, we can make as much progress as we can, and it's phased. Instead of it just sort of being 50-ish, it might be able to be 55 or 60% in year one and the other 40% in year two, which is totally covered off by, as Denise has said, we've identified those one-time expenditures. So you're not burdening. When you sit down at the 2026 budget table, you're not starting off, you're even. So these strategies all avoid burdening future budgets, and they're very responsible, because there's some communities where they hire a bunch of staff in October, and then of course the other 9 months are in the next year's budget. So, and some administrations game the system like that, and I just don't think that's appropriate. So we've been very careful here to make sure we're not burdening a future budget in any way.
Councillor Dean, and then Councillor Wilhelm.
So I think everybody, I'm not going to speak for everybody, I think everybody understands the process and appreciates the fact that you're not burdening future budgets and future councils. So are you looking for a motion? I think the number that the Reeve was floated out was 4.5 with a phased approach. So I'd be prepared to make a motion that we accept a 4.5%
For
increase.
today, we would just accept this information, and then we
Well,
go to
no,
council? Or could we get
if I could, Mr. Reeve, if you pass a motion, your intent is clear, and then we take that motion to shape the final budget package that needs to be adopted on December 18th. So the more clarity we have, the better, because we can't get to December 18th and go, well, we misunderstood and we need another meeting, because then we're into a special meeting. And after December 18th, I don't plan to be thinking about council meetings, not that I have anything against them, and I don't think you do either. We've all got busy lives. So a motion would be good, because we'll use that to shape that final document that goes in December 18th.
I just want to check procedure.
Yeah, so
Councillor Burrows?
Sorry, just before, can I clarify, are we talking about a 4.5% increase in mill rate or 4.5% increase in revenue?
Revenue.
In revenue, okay, perfect, yep, just checking it.
Correct?
Thank you.
I see Denise's got her hands up.
So, that would be a 4.5% increase in mill rates.
Well, it's
In the rates that we currently have, but the payment for the taxpayer is different, because 4.5, so if we do 4.5%.
No, but the other piece of this is, if you're saying 4.5% total, 1% is covered off by that tax holiday coming off.
Yeah.
So whatever number you pick, the 1% doesn't directly affect the ratepayers in terms of the mill rate, because that assessment came back on stream. So if you say 4.5 less the 1, we're more in that 3.5. And it's, so I hope that helped clarify it, because that's where we've had the benefit of this tax holiday ending.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah.
Because that's, again, where we got in trouble, is talking about this darn mill rate. Because when we get, if you're talking about a 4.5% increase in mill rate, then we get to tax time, assessment time, and we find that the market has gone down 5%. We have to increase the mill rate 6% just to make up for that loss. I do not like talking about increases to the mill rate because they're misleading. I think we should be talking about increases in terms of revenue. And the difference to me, when I compare it to a resident, is nobody cares what the price of West Texas crude is. They care how much it costs to fill the tank in their car. And that's the difference between assessment and mill rate and what we end up charging for taxes. So I think we need to be really clear that we're talking about revenue generation, not an increase in mill rate.
Councilor Wilhelm, I see your hand up.
Yeah, and I totally understand what Councilor Burrows is saying. And why he has trepidation about making sure we understand what we're talking about when we're saying mill rate. So I think we can either adjust our wording to ensure that we're communicating that properly. It's, and Denisha, let me know if I'm saying this wrong, but it's a 4.5% mill rate increase based upon flat assessment. That's what we're saying, right? So we can say that, or we can alternatively say, what's our actual budget increase, right?
Yeah.
If we say that instead, I think it makes a lot more sense because, we're making an assumption when we say, hey, we're gonna do a 4.5% rate increase. Like Councilor Burrows says, nobody knows what that means. Even when you say it's a 4.5% on a flat assessment, you tell a taxpayer that, they have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
If you say we're doing a 6.9% budget increase based on a 4.5% tax rate change, they're going to be like, oh, I don't understand what that tax rate thing is, but 6.9% budget increase makes sense to me. Explain to me what 6.9% means in a budget increase. Well, that means X, Y, and Z. That means service levels get a little bit better. So Councilor Burrows is totally correct, and I think you guys in municipal administration, you understand tax rate change increases. You understand what that means when assessment is flat. The residents, most of them, don't understand what that means. I didn't understand what it means before I got on council. So I want to support Councilor Burrows' comment that let's change that terminology when we're talking to, let's not talk about the tax rate increase, even though in the end, that's what we are talking about. Let's talk about what is the overall budget change. And I believe it's 6.9%.
6.32
Yeah, I just
is the actual
want
to
to
actual.
caucus with
Yeah.
Denisha here.
No, so 6.32 is the actual.
Based on flat assessment.
Based on actual, so actual to actual, so 2024 actual to the budgetary actual is 6.32.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's 6.32.
That makes perfect sense to me. I understand it. 6 point some percent, because I did the numbers at 6.3 or something like that.
No, I'm just gonna
That's
do
what the budget
Councilor
increase is. In order to
thing,
accommodate that,
just to
we
see
have to
what that
have a mill
is, so
rate
that I know what I'm
increase
doing.
of 4.
But we have to factor in just, we have to ask the resident.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
What-
Yeah,
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 what is
I'm
the
gonna do
budget
that.
for what numbers? If you say the motion, my budget's going up this term, or you say, well, my taxes this meeting.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Okay, I just wanted to make, and just to follow that up then, okay, we've talked about the terminology, I think between Councilor Burrows and myself, what we've expressed, I hope makes sense to administration.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And then secondly, you want an option coming out of this meeting today. Is that option simply 4.5% based off of X, Y, and Z? And then what we would like to see of the initiatives that we find are the most important, so that when you come back on the 10th or the council meeting on the 18th, we've given you our mindset on which of the initiatives we feel are the most important, and then we'll allow you guys to work with that 4.5 and move forward. Is that what you're looking for? Because I obviously, with everybody else, want to move the meeting forward so everybody can go.
Yeah, so it is, we need to get the budget in place, and then we can resurvey you in terms of the discussion around this table. Tell us what your, what do you want to say, top 3 or top 5 are? And then we'll use that to look at the application of the additional capacity we'll have, that will be an important factor in guiding us in doing that. But we can do that outside of, because we've all had to focus on budget, I just can't tell you how our desks are blowing up. Because, we wish we would have all of this extra capacity joining on January 1st, but guess what? It's going to take some time. But we will commit to do that, because those exercises where there's discussions between council and administration about the priorities to ensure we're aligned, because we're in this together, and we need to be aligned in terms of what our collective vision is in terms of the most important priorities for this community. And I think there's been a lack of that alignment of effort. I think we've made some tremendous strides, and we want to continue to do that. So that carries forward as part of how we operate, part of our culture and the way we do things here. So we will commit to do that. We don't have to do that before the 18th, but we will commit to do that before we work with SMT and work with our extended management group here to make some final decisions of what we can do. And that is not easy, because right now we've got absolute need for all of them, and we need to phase it over the 2 years as we've talked about. But we're going to do the level best we can to apply some help in the areas of greatest need. And so we'll be guided by your priorities.
Absolutely.
Councillor Wilhelm?
So with regards to that, then, like Councillor Dean and Councillor Cush have both said 4.5% on what we've talked about now makes sense.
Yeah, so Denisha is calculating the revenue so that everybody's comfortable. If you're comfortable enough, Denisha, we could say it looks like it's in this range. We have to go fine tune this to make sure and double, triple check everything. So could you sort of indicate the range, Denisha, and subject to the fine tuning? We're singing off the same song sheet here.
Yeah, so if we're doing a 4.5% increase on 2024 revenues, like 2024 actuals, then that goes to 1.357 increase in revenue. So that's 1.35 over 2024 actuals. If we, so just doing a pure, what we currently have in the actuals, and if we do 4.4% of that, so 4% of that brings us to 31,500,000 roughly. So that's what a 4% dollar for dollar increase gives me. If I were to say 4.5, if I were to go in and say, let's change your mill rates 4.5%, that gives a 4.92% increase in revenue. In the revenue increase between actuals and budget.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so I think we're, just to follow up my last comment, 4.5 rate increase as discussed now, and then followed up with what that means in a revenue increase. Is everyone still comfortable with that dollar value and allowing administration to then move forward with adjusting the budgets accordingly? I think we've all talked about 4.5 and a phased staffing increase in 2025 into 2026. I'm comfortable with that, but I think that we can take that and pass it on to you guys and take it to the next meeting.
Councillor Dean?
So what I'm seeing this motion would kind of sound like is the council direct administration to work with a 4.92% revenue increase based on a 4.5% mill rate increase and a phased approach for the staffing initiatives.
So that's kind of where we're at, Tanisha?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just made the motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any discussion on Councillor Dean's motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor? Councillor Burrows?
In favor.
Thank you. That is passed. Anything else for tonight, Mr. Benedetto? Or are we good to adjourn?
We're good.
We're good.
Can I get a motion to Councillor Dean?
Sure, but I had a question. So do we need our budget meeting on the 10th?
No. Now, and that's hugely helpful, because to go to the 10th, to shape all this, to get it in the agenda package for you, very difficult. So it is huge. I mean, there's been a good thorough vetting, a good thorough discussion all the way through, so none of us have to leave this room to feel it was rushed in any way. There's been great discussion and dialogue, so that really helps us to give us, instead of from the 10th, from now, to get that put in that agenda package for you. Thank you.
I'm sorry to.
Just, can I ask one thing before we adjourn?
Go ahead, John.
Can we get that, start getting that ad hoc committee for the taxation committee back together again, so that we're moving forward with that? So, because we do run out of time very quickly on these things.
We'll try to get that in the works here. I do agree with you, John. It's been a while since we met.
Thanks.
Jeff?
Your worship, I'm just curious in terms of procedure. We do have the meeting, special meeting scheduled for Tuesday. If it's not necessary, we probably need a motion to cancel.
You know, that's, yeah, let's just pass a motion that we cancel. It's a special meeting, so just put a motion in, it's safe.
Move to cancel December 10th.
I'll move to cancel that meeting on the 10th.
Thank you. Call the question, all in favor?
Move to adjourn.
Just wait, Councilor
In
Burrows.
favor?
Okay, and move to adjourn, call the question, all in favor?
There's just one thing I'd like to say to you guys.